Affairs don't begin in the bedroom, they begin in childhood. In the part of you that decided she needed to bury her truth just to be loved. The part that's now screaming to be seen. I'm Alex Croxford, and this is the Deeper Love podcast, where we name the shame, face the guilt, and help you find your way back to yourself. So let's begin. Many of the women who I speak to and who find their way into my world have often done years of therapy. They've read a lot of books, they've listened to a lot of podcasts, they understand what went wrong in their marriage, they know their patterns, they understand their childhood trauma, and yet they still wake up some mornings feeling like they are the worst person in the world. Like something inside of them is broken, and how will they ever forgive or trust themselves after what they've done? So today I want to talk a little bit more about why insight alone often does not dissolve the shame that comes after an affair. And, we're not doing anything wrong trying to go this route. Society doesn't tell us any other way. We are inundated with information. We are in the age of information. We can find anything out that we want. And to some degree, we believe, due to our conditioning, that our knowledge is the thing that is going to free us. If we can just understand more, if we can just know more, if we can just analyze more, then finally, when that penny drops, there will be a sense of release and peace. But unfortunately, shame does not exist in the thinking mind. It's actually a full body experience. So the shame in itself is a belief that I am a bad person, or I am wrong, or I am broken, I am disgusting, I am bad at my core. And these beliefs get stored in the nervous system. It is a full body state that you are experiencing. And it can show up in so many different ways that perhaps you haven't even recognized as shame. I know I certainly didn't. So this whole state of self-contraction, so this whole state of contraction and threat exists in your body. And it causes the body to collapse inward. So you might experience tightness in your chest, or a heaviness in your heart area. Perhaps even your shoulders rolling forward, or a clenched jaw even. You might even notice yourself feeling physically smaller, making yourself smaller when you're in rooms with people. And this is because shame activates a threat response in the nervous system. And so the body starts to move into a protective posture. It's almost like the body is trying to say, hide, don't be seen. And that often makes people want to withdraw or disappear. I can't tell you the number of times that I wanted to go to sleep and not wake up. I wanted to hide myself under a rock. And it felt so strong and so visceral that now I understand what was happening more deeply with my central nervous system. But it was seriously uncomfortable at the time. And, to be honest, this is why many people end up taking their own lives due to shame, because it's such a low frequency emotion. In fact, it is the hardest emotion for us to feel in terms of the frequency that we experience it at. So if joy and bliss and love and authenticity are really high frequency emotions, shame and fear and guilt and anger are low frequency emotions, and shame sits right at the bottom, which is why it's so hard. So other ways that you might notice that it's in your body is shallow breathing. So you might always feel like you can only bring your breath to the top of your chest, or your breath feels tight or shallow. And that's because your system, your nervous system, is in a constant state of mild fight or flight the whole time. So again, it's because your body is braced for threat, and why it feels so hard to relax or rest right now, because your body is prepped for whatever is going to come, braced for whatever might come. And when the shame is active in the nervous system, the brain's threat system also turns on. So now your brain is creating obsessive thinking patterns, such as replaying conversations that you've had, reliving the betrayal or the affair, or perhaps imagining other people judging you, thinking about what other people are going to say about you, how you're going to deal with this at work, amongst your friends, asking constantly, what is wrong with me? Really circling around the issue. Should I tell my husband? Should I leave my husband? Should I leave my husband for our affair partner? Should I stay? Should I go? It's this constant noise in our minds because the brain is trying to solve the threat. But really and truly, the threat is internal. And so the mind loops endlessly because it's never going to find a solution to the problem because the problem already exists within you. And on top of that, shame activates either freeze or shut down in the nervous system. And so often what happens is women then feel emotionally numb or flat. And I see it a lot of times with my clients where their partners feel very emotionally activated by the situation, but they feel numb, or they feel like they can't access what it is that they need to feel about it. They just feel flat and disconnected and don't know how to be with their partner's experience, let alone their own experience. And on top of that, it leads them to not being able to feel joy, not being able to feel alive, feeling trapped, feeling grey, not being able to access creativity or desire or pleasure. And that's because really and truly shame reduces access to the part of the nervous system where we experience connection and pleasure and aliveness. It reduces the access to that because we don't technically need that right now when we're in a survival state. And so that's why, life may have felt grey before the affair, which may be one of the reasons why you ended up in the affair, but that's why it feels even potentially more grey now, and why it's so hard to stop obsessing or stop reaching for your affair partner, because they felt like the solution to it, especially now. And the mind now becomes the enforcer of the shame state. So now it's almost like the mind is coming to lead the army of shame. And it will be perhaps repeating thoughts such as, you ruined everything, you're a terrible person, you don't deserve happiness, you can't trust yourself ever again, how could you do this, you thought you were a good person. But these thoughts that you are having are the cognitive expression of the nervous system state. And they don't do anything, they don't get us anywhere, they don't heal anything. They just keep the shame cycle alive. We stay stuck in the story that we are a bad person and that we have destroyed everything. And it's impossible when we are in this state for the nervous system to even receive kindness or love, because it also interprets kindness as unsafe. So I remember this in my own marriage, where even after I had told my ex-husband and we were working on our marriage, every time he was even vaguely nice to me, I felt like I had to push it away. Like my whole body felt so unsafe in that moment when he expressed any kind of care or kindness towards me. I honestly felt so undeserving of any kind of niceness. I didn't believe it. I would flinch and I'd just push love away. You know, even my friends who knew and would share helpful and kind thoughts to me, I would just not be able to receive them. It didn't feel good at all. And the more connection that we experience in these moments, the unsafer it feels, because we are in a state of not wanting to be seen. We have done something that is so messy, in inverted commas, in the human world, that we don't want to be seen in it. Because if people really know me, then they wouldn't accept me. And so we just reject any kind of kindness or any kind of love because it feels like, well, you've got no idea how bad I am. And therefore, connection also feels like a threat. I have to keep you at arm's length. I have to keep you over here. Because if I keep you here, then you can maybe just about accept me for who I am and what I've done. And it leads to behavior such as overworking, really punishing ourselves through overworking, over exercising. I was actually recording a podcast for somebody else today, and I was talking about how in this period of after I had cheated on my ex-husband, I went into an obsessional state of over-exercising and under-eating, even more than I had done before. This was like the absolute pinnacle of that. I was the thinnest I'd ever been, because I was unconsciously trying to punish myself. I was staying in a relationship where my husband couldn't even love me anymore, but I felt like I had to stay because, first of all, I loved him and I wanted to make it work, but also I deserved this. I deserved the way he was treating me. And we stay in dynamics that aren't necessarily good for us because deep down there's a part of us that believes that we deserve to be treated like this. And we can't experience joy and we can't experience pleasure because we don't deserve to give our bodies over to have sex with our partners when perhaps it doesn't feel good. We don't want to do it, but it feels like, well, I owe it to them and I don't deserve to feel good anyway. And this is really the nervous system trying to balance the moral scales, if you like. Because if I can punish myself, or if I can be punished, which is probably what I experienced as a child, then I'm safe. And when we're children and we've done something wrong, if we were punished, perhaps through physical violence or through being sent to our room, or maybe even put on the naughty step, or, you know, brought up and shamed in front of a class, then our nervous system knows that punishment is the requirement for what we have done. And if I can get punished, then maybe I'll be safe again. So I really want you to understand that even though it might feel like the voices in your head are separate from what's going on in your body, it is an absolute full body state that keeps the nervous system contracted. And when your nervous system is contracted like that, it is so hard, as I said, to access anything good, anything exciting, anything joyful, anything alive. We often turn to scrolling or, drinking or anything that to try and bring some kind of pleasure into our lives. And that's why understanding what happened doesn't make the shame go anywhere. You can understand everything about the affair. You can know all of the nuances in the relationship. You can know how your husband or your wife didn't meet you in the way that you needed to be met. You can understand that perhaps there was no emotional intimacy in your marriage. You can know that maybe you disconnected or they disconnected, or you weren't experiencing being truthful, nor were they, or there was unhealthy dynamics in terms of extremely big arguments. We can understand it all. We can understand, what our affair partner was giving us versus what our husband was giving us. But you can still feel that tightness and that weight and that heaviness in your body, because understanding happens in your mind, in your prefrontal cortex. That is where you understand what has happened. But shame lives in your nervous system. And so real healing, if I'm really honest, the true healing of this pain is to no longer try to think our way out of shame, and instead start working on the nervous system and the parts of us that are carrying these stories and these beliefs about who we are in the world. And it's through doing that we get to begin to find self-trust again. We get to be able to move through life no longer weighed down by guilt and shame. We can start to tap into our own creativity. We can start to discover joy again, because we're no longer being blocked by the experience inside of our body of shame that we're carrying. You can begin to calm the nervous system, so the nervous system isn't constantly braced. You'll start to experience more softness in your body. And this is the exact work that we do inside the healed heart. And this is not just about understanding the affair. In fact, we barely talk about the affair, because the focus of the program is to heal the shame that lives underneath it. You absolutely get to live a life, perhaps for the next 30, 40, 50 years, where you are not drowning in the shame or guilt or confusion of the past. And this pain that you're in right now gets to be a moment of awakening. It gets to be a portal that you get to walk through. So if you are interested in more, then I would love for you to just click on the link in the show notes and take a look at the program. We are meeting people now, and we begin on the 28th of April. So I can't wait to meet you. Thank you for listening to the Deeper Love podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. Until next time.